everyone, I'm here at BGG.CON 2015. This is Phoebe Wild for BGG News, and I'm here with Todd from AEG, and he's going to show us Flock.
Yes, this is Flock by designer David J. Mortimer. It's coming out in February of next year, but we had a few advanced copies here to show off. In Flock, you are trying to build the largest flock of birds, which is how you score your victory points. But it's difficult to do that, to manage that, because birds tend to flock together, and your opponent's actions will definitely have an impact on your flock as well. So just to explain how it works, everybody begins with 3 of their color bird, and then there'll be more available later in the game as you add to your flock. The person who got up earliest that day gets to go first, and we'll pretend that was me. That's probably not true, but the early bird gets a worm, so the early bird player does start with 1 little worm token, and they'll be used later. On your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to take 1 of your birds and you're going to put it on any one of these activities that you want to do. You have feeding, nesting, dominance, laying, and hatching, and then I'll explain competition in a minute. But so for instance, if I put 1 bird on feeding right now, that was my turn. The next player can come along and say put 1 bird on nesting. And then I could put a 2nd bird on feeding. And then that person decides to put 1 on feeding as well.
Yep.
Well, if I decide at that point that I want to go ahead and collect on feeding, I go ahead and take my birds off, and it says here for every 2 birds you take off, you get 3 worms. So I would get 3 more worms into my stock here. But because my birds took off and flew, the other players has to fly too, and that says they only get 1 for the 1 bird. So you ended up getting 1. Now you can also use that as an aggressive move. If you see a player who's putting a whole bunch of birds on there, you could throw 1 bird on and then pull it off, and all that other player's birds have to go too. But you always get something out of it. So that continues on. As you notice, feeding collects worm tokens, nesting collects little nest tokens, which are these little guys. So you can get little nests. And then if you come down here to laying and you put a bird on it and you take a bird off, it says 1 bird plus a nest. So you turn in your nest, gets an egg. So now you have an egg token. Over here on hatching, a bird plus a worm plus an egg gets you another bird. So you would go to the stock and you've got it. Now you've got another bird in your flock. Over here you have what's called the Pecking Order. That's basically initiative. This player had initiative. That's the turn that it's on. You can put a bird on dominance, and when you pull a bird off of dominance, if you have the most birds on it, you get to take over the Pecking Order, and you're now initiative. Anybody else who was on there who didn't have as many birds as you can take their birds and immediately redistribute them to another thing on the table. So that leaves us with competition. So on competition, you'll notice it goes by rounds, and each of these cards has 2 sides for the number of players, from 2 or 3 to 5. On this one, it'll tell you, for the first round, if 3 birds are on competition, if someone who has a bird there decides to activate, that will cause the end of the round. For round 2, it takes 4. For round 3, it takes 5. First thing you do when the round ends, you have to check how many birds you have. Your first 2 birds in your flock, and it includes the ones still left on the board when the round ended. The 2 that are 2 are free, and then for every other bird, for each individual extra bird you have to pay a worm and a nest, or you have to return them to the pot. You don't get to carry them over. But if you're able to pay for them all, you get to keep your big flock. And any that are in play can stay in play for the beginning of the next round. They're already waiting on that one. After you've paid your upkeep on your birds, you go to Relocate. So each bird on the competition card can be moved to another card. But the way that happens is, let's say that I have 2 here, I can't move to more than 2 cards. So I could either move 1 here and 1 here, or I could move both of them here. And I'll explain why I might do that, because there's a bird sitting here. The reason I might do that is for scoring. You score, you get 1 victory point for every bird in your pool. So let's say the yellow player has 2 birds in their pool, so they would move up 2 victory points right there. Then you look at the card values. If you notice, each of these cards has a number with 2 numbers with a slash. The first number is for first place. The other number is for second place. Yep, there you go. And so in this case, on laying, there's only 1 bird here, so that player would get the full total 4 points, and so that player would move up to 4. Over here, there's 2 different color birds on here. The black birds were in first place, so that player would then get 5 more points, and then yellow being in second gets 2 points. And that continues on until the 3rd round is complete. The little sunshine moves through 3 rounds, and then the game's over. That is essentially flock. The main trick is learning how to manage when other people are going to make your birds leave and being able to get enough resources, and when do you switch from collecting the things to keep your flock alive to making more of a flock. So.
Excellent. So you mentioned it's a 2 to 5 player game.
It is a 2 to 5 player game.
And about how long does it take to play?
Oh, it plays pretty quickly. With people who've learned the rules and are pretty experienced at it, you can play a game. We played a 3-player game that took about 20-25 minutes last night. With more people, it'll take a little bit longer, but not terribly much.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much for the overview.
Thank you. Appreciate it.